Alright everyone, welcome back to the third tutorial on this MCP Made Simple series. Thank you very much for all the feedback on the previous one where we actually looked at browser tools, and the number one request that I've seen was that you wanted to see a Supabase MCP tutorial. So here it is. For today's tutorial, I've made it relevant for both expert users of Supabase as well as total beginners as well. So if you have no idea what Supabase is, just follow along and I'll actually show you how to set up your project from the beginning. But if you're already an existing Supabase user and you just want to know which Supabase MCP server to use and how to get it integrated, this tutorial is also for you. Not only that, I'm going to be doing this both for Windows and Mac, as well as Windsurf and Cursor. So this should really be the only Supabase MCP server tutorial that you will ever need. Are you ready to get stuck in? Let's go. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to demonstrate a simple app. So what we have here is a very simple app. It's a storefront and currently it's not connected to any database. I can purchase items by pressing buy and you can see that the number is decrementing. But because this is actually not connected to a database, you will see that if I refresh the page now, all the numbers come back. And let's take a look at why this is the case. And this is the reason why. I'm just defining items within the app like this. So if I just add another bunch of items like this, and I refresh the page, you can see that the shop refreshes, but none of this is actually going to persist because you have no database. So if I buy it and I refresh it, it's just going to re-instantiate it from here. So that's the reason why you want to have a database. So let me just reset this for a while. So this is how it looks like, just two items. And what I'm going to do now is that I'm actually going to connect this to my Supabase instance. For those of you who've never worked with databases before, you actually will need to run SQL commands. And here's an example of what a SQL command is going to look like. It is pretty hefty, and if you're entirely new to databases, this actually seems quite complicated because all I want to do is actually insert a bunch of stuff into my database, a wooden sword, health potion, iron shield, magic staff, and a leather armor, and the rest of the things is just really complicated. So I'm going to show you how you manually do this without an MCP server, and then I'll show you how to do this with a Supabase MCP server as well. What you would usually need to do is that you need to copy this, and you need to then switch over to your Supabase project. You have to go into your SQL editor, right? Create a new snippet, paste it in, and then you have to press run. You will then go into your tables, look for the table, and that's where you will see all of it showing up here. So now that this is done, let us just go back to our store. And this is how it looks like right now. You can see that it's still using our dummy data because it's not connected to Supabase. So what we need to do now is actually connect to Supabase. Now bear with me because at the end of this tutorial, I will actually show you how to get this entire project up and running so that you can actually follow along. You will need to go into your editor and you will need to actually replace the values in the env file with the actual values from your project. Now a caveat is that you should never ever show these values to anyone. I'm just doing it for this tutorial and I'm going to be tearing down the entire Supabase server, so it really doesn't matter. But you should never ever show this to anyone and you should never ever store this into your Git repository as well. Because if they have these, they're going to be able to mess with your database. All right, so that's a big disclaimer. So now that I set this, you will see that it is actually pulling from the database. And that's great because now if I click buy and I click buy here and I refresh the page, you will see that it's actually decremented it, right? So wooden sword is still 0, health potion is now 4, let's buy all the health potion, and if I refresh it, that's great, so it's working. This is the reason why you want to have a database, right? So Supabase makes it really simple to get a database up and running, as you have seen. Now the big problem here is really this file. If you do not know SQL or SQL, this is going to be pretty difficult to write. And yes, you can actually ask AI to write this for you, but you still had to log into Supabase, find the editor, copy and paste it into it. And the worst part is that if you have to make any changes here, you have to then copy and paste it, put it back into Supabase again. This is very manual, it is very brittle, and it makes it very prone to error. Now, wouldn't it be great if you could do all of this via an MCP server? You might say, wait a minute, doesn't Windsurf already have a Supabase or database MCP server that I can use? And yes, it does. And I'm going to show you how to use that one, but it is very limited. And then after that, I'm going to show you how to use this one by Alexander Zuev, which is far more powerful. So let's go back to our editor. And the way that you would add an MCP server in this case is that you go Control-Shift-P or Command-Shift-P if you're on a Mac, type MCP, and you go to the Windsurf MCP configuration panel. And you will see that, yes, indeed, it does have a bunch of out-of-the-box MCP servers for you. And the one that you want to use is the PostgresSQL server. So you click Add Server. It's going to ask you for the URL of the database that you have. Go back to your project overview. Click on the Connect button up here. And under Direct Connection, you're going to have this entire string. Just click Copy. Go back into your editor and paste it here. Under your password, you will put in the password that you actually had. So in this case, I'm going to do this. And don't worry, I just use some random password. You should never ever share your password as well. Goes without saying. And once you're done, you can open up Cascade. So Control L or Command L. Just drag this over here. There's one MCP server and it says that it's ready to go. Let's refresh it just to make sure if it doesn't show up for you. And great, so you can run a read-only SQL query. What this means is that you can actually ask the MCP server or use Windsurf to ask things about your database. So I can say, give me all the items in my database in descending order of count. So the great thing about this is that you're going to use natural language within Windsurf to ask questions about your database. You don't need to run SQL commands. So it shows you here the SQL command that it generated because it understood what you wanted, and it tells you here are the items sorted by quantity in descending order. This is great. So this is the value of the MCP server, right? Because now you're able to use natural language to ask questions, and you don't need to bother about any of these SQL stuff anymore. Well, that's actually not true. And the reason why is because if you actually go back into your MCP server and look at it carefully again, it says run a read-only query. So what this means is that you can ask questions, but you can't actually make modifications to the database with this out-of-the-box MCP server from Windsurf. So this means that you actually still needed to copy and paste this and copy into Supabase and run the command. Yeah, that's terrible. So this is why you want to use this other MCP server in order to supercharge your vibe coding. So this is Alexander Zouav's Supabase MCP server, and it's really powerful because it not only allows you to ask questions, it allows you to make modifications to your database as well. And I'll show you why this is so important. It allows you to deal with many other aspects of Supabase, not just the database, but for the focus of this tutorial, we'll just focus on the database aspect. But once you get it running for your database, you actually can leverage this MCP server for many other features of Supabase. Now the trouble with this server is that you can't just use it out of the box, like how we did the previous MCP server. You're going to have to install it into your computer manually using Python. The instructions are actually very clear, but they can be quite complicated if you're not familiar with Python or development environments. So I'm going to show you how to do this exactly. So the first thing you want to do is to install Python. Go to python.org. And when you're in python.org, go to Downloads, scroll down. The important thing here is that you need anything with 3.12 or higher. So you can actually download 3.13 and it'll work as well. But I'm going to be using 3.12. I'm going to download it and scroll down again. And if you're on Windows, make sure you use the Windows installer because it's the recommended approach and it helps to overcome any problems that you will have. Once you've installed this, the way that you can verify it is that you go to your command prompt in Windows and you type Python. This turns up, it means it's installed. And you can run it again and do Python -- version. You can see 3.12.8. Now, it's different from what I showed on the website just now because I installed this earlier, but it doesn't matter. As long as 3.12 or 3.13, everything will work. So that's step one. So now for step two. You will need to install something called pipx. Without going into too much detail, pip is used by Python for dependency management, and pipx allows you to have an isolated environment when you're running these dependencies or applications. You don't actually need to know any of this, but post in the comments if you want to learn more, and I'll be very happy to answer questions, and I'm sure others in the community would be able to help too. Right now, let's just crack on. So the first thing that you want to do is run python -n pip install -- user pipx. This will install pipx into your machine. And in this case, it says that I've already installed this, so it will look slightly different for you, but it doesn't matter. And if you type pipx now, you should be able to see pipx running. Now, in some cases, it will say command not found. In that case, what you want to do is you want to run python -n pipx ensure path. This is really important because this will add it into the path for you. you would then close your terminal and reload it and run pipx again, and it should show that it is running correctly. Now this is really important because if you don't do this, you will not be able to run pipx in your command terminal and you won't be able to add this to Windsurf. Now this is step 2 done. Step 3, you want to install the MCP server, and this is actually even simpler. All you need to do is run pipx install Supabase MCP Server. So let's just do that. You do pipx install Supabase MCP Server, and in this case I've already installed it. For you, it will look something like this. It will show that it's installing, and when you're done, you should be able to run Supabase MCP Server, and you should see this running in your terminal. Great. So if you see this running, it means that it's installed perfectly and you're good to go. Now, I'm gonna cancel this now because you don't actually need to run it manually yourself. This will be actually run by Windsurf. So that's step 3 done. Step 4, you need to actually add this into Windsurf. If you go back into your editor, what you want to do now is you do Ctrl-Shift-P. Once again, go to type MCP, go to Windsurf MCP configuration panel. And this time, rather than looking for one of them here, you want to do add custom server. You will see that you actually have the PostgresSQL MCP server that we just installed earlier. Feel free to just delete all of this and save, because we don't need it anymore. We're going to be installing something much more powerful. If you clone my repository, you will see that there's actually a sample MCP JSON over here in .cursor. And don't worry, this works for both Cursor and Windsurf. And you take this, copy it, and pop it back into this folder over here. If you're on Windows, you need to change this and put Supabase MCP Server.exe. The rest of these things can be retrieved from Supabase itself. So I'm going to show you where all of them are. For the project ref, go to Supabase, scroll down, you will see these letters before supabase.co. That's the one that you want. Go ahead and pop it in here, right? Your password is the one that you set earlier, and I just set it to something very silly. For the region, this will be based on where you set up your Supabase project. So in my case, I was using Frankfurt, and this is the key. And you can find a list of all these locations, both in my GitHub repository, as well as Alexander Zuev's repository as well. The Supabase access token, this is actually the same token that we saw previously. So this is the key API key here. And finally, the service row key. This one is slightly more hidden. So you have to go down to project settings, and then you have to go down to data API, and then you have this service row secret here, reveal it, copy it, and then you want to pop it in here. And you can click save. Once this is all set, you turn on Cascade, Control L. Let's look at the MCP server, do refresh. Just give it a second, and now you will see you have Supabase with 12 tools. And this really puts the super in Supabase, because now you can perform any action with your database. So let me demonstrate this. For all items in my database, set the quantity to 999. All right. You wouldn't have been able to do this with the previous MCP server, but with this one, it should be able to do it because it has full access to your Supabase project. Now, it's going to turn on unsafe mode because it knows that it's going to do database operations, and then it's actually going to run the SQL query. Like I said, you didn't need to know this. You just had to use natural language to prompt it, but it's going to be able to do that. Now, let's jump back to Supabase and actually see if that's the case. So if we go to our table and we go to items, you can see everything is set to 999. Don't take my word for it. Let's go back to our app and let's refresh the page. And you can see everything here is 999. And if I buy an iron shield, it will decrement. And if we swap back to Supabase, you can see and refresh, you can see that the iron shield has now 995. So now you can write to your database using these tools. And isn't that great? I'm going to implement one final feature that will really show you why having this MCP server is so important. This is especially so for people who are familiar with databases. And the word for this is called migrations. What does this mean? Now imagine that you've made this game or this app and you've already been running it, people have been buying items, but now you want to implement a new feature called rarity. So just imagine you want to implement some rarity. So let's just say I want items to be common, uncommon, rare, epic, and legendary. And so this means in order for you to have rarity, you're going to have to add a property to your table. Now the problem with this is that if you add a property to your table like this, you will need to make sure that on Supabase you have a new column. And in order to do so, you will need to run a migration. And a migration here looks something like this, right? Is that you now have to define the types of rarity, and then you will need to alter the table. You need to insert all of these. You will need to then insert the rarities for existing items or any new items, and you have to create an index. Yuck! This is quite complicated if you're entirely new to databases. Now, this is where the Supabase MCP server really thrives. You can actually tell it to do all of this for you without you having to run this migration yourself. So let's put it to work. Let me show you how this would work. So open up Cascade and say, I have introduced rarity into my app. Please update my database and creatively insert more items based on some distribution. And I'm going to just run this and let's see what happens. So it's going to live dangerously again. It's going to enable unsafe mode, and it's going to insert a variety of items with all quantities set to 99. And maybe I shouldn't have done this, but that's okay. All right, and it tried to update it, but then here's the best part, right? So it actually looks and it says, I need to create the enum type and add a rarity column to the items table. This is great. The AI tried to perform an operation, knew that there was an error, and knows how to fix it. And it then says, I have to create the migration in order for me to then proceed with this instruction. So this is the power of the Supabase MCP server, because you can now not worry about the SQL commands, about migrations, and you're now able to just use natural language, stay within Windsurf or Cursor, and be able to run everything using prompts. So it's going to be able to fix its own errors. And let's just wait for it to get to that state. Let's pop over to our Supabase table. I've just refreshed it. And you can see now it's actually added lots of different items for me, and it's assigned a different rarity for all of them. And then we can just pop over back to our app, refresh it, and you can see, there we go. That it has not only inserted items, it's set rarities for them, it saw some of the errors and fixed them itself. And this is the power of the Supabase MCP server. So a very big thanks to Alexander Zverev, who created this MCP server. You should definitely go to his GitHub repo and star it, because it's such a wonderful asset. So I hope that this tutorial has been helpful for you. So for those of you who know nothing about databases or Supabase, now you know why it's useful. For those of you who are already familiar with these concepts, I hope you now see why using a Supabase MCP server can make your life a lot easier. So as promised, I've shown you how to do this on Windows with Windsurf. I'm going to switch over to Mac and do the same thing with Cursor. You'll see it's pretty much the same process that you go through. But I decided to do it so that it's helpful for all you vibe coders out there. All right, we're back. As promised, I'll be showing you how to do this on a Mac and using Cursor. Just for beginners, I'm going to show you how I integrated my project with Supabase so that you can do so too. So you can just follow along if you want. The code is available on my GitHub page at this URL. Once you're here, click on code, and then you can use HTTPS or SSH. I'm going to use SSH to clone it. I do git clone, and I paste it there. It will get it in. The next thing to do is to go into that directory, and I then like to do cursor dot. This will actually open it up in Cursor, and you can see it loaded up here. The next thing to do is to go into lesson 3, because that's the one that we want. Go into app and do npm install. This will install all the dependencies that are needed to run this app. And finally, just run npm run dev. And if you open up your browser at this URL, you should be able to see the app running. That's great. But like I said, this is running locally. This is not connected to a database. And there's some instructions here on how you can connect it to Supabase, which I'm going to run through right now. So step 1, create a Supabase project at supabase.com. So if you go to supabase.com, you can sign up with your Google account. And once you've signed up, you can go to your dashboard, click on New Project, and I'm going to call this Mac Ye Old Shop to make it different from what I had previously. You can choose whatever organization you want. I have a couple, so I'm going to use it for this series. And then I'm going to set the password for my database. And here's where you set your region. You have different regions based on where you think your app is going to be run. I'm closest to Frankfurt, EU, and I'm going to click Create New Project. Once it's been created, the main thing you want to do is to scroll down here for Project API. And these are the two main things that you need to set within the project. So go back into Cursor or your IDE. If you go into lesson 3, go into app, you will see that there's a .env.example. This is where you're going to put the values that you saw in Supabase. This is where you're going to put the values that you see in Supabase, and you pop it into here. Remember, never ever share these with anyone. And it doesn't matter for this video, because I'm going to tear down these servers before the video goes live. You should never ever share it with anyone. So the first thing that you want to do, file, and then you do save as, and change this from .env.example to .env. It will give you a warning, doesn't matter, just say use dot. And now you want to make sure that you're changing the file here in .env. The reason why is that .env.example is actually part of the repository because you want to show people what values you need to set, but you should never ever put your real values into there. This .env one, you can see, is actually grayed out because this will never ever be committed into your repository. And the reason for that is that you can see in your git ignore file, there's actually environment variable files that will be ignored and will never be committed into the repository. This is to keep your project safe. You should never reveal these to anyone. Anyway, back to env, like I said, you want to copy the two values that you had in. So project URL will go into project URL, and then the API key will likewise go into the API key. Now you save it, that will work. Now you go into the Supabase folder, there's something called 01 create items table. Like I said, this is the manual approach of doing it, but this is just to make sure that you can get up and running. Copy this, go back into Supabase, go into SQL editor, just paste it here and click run. It will say success, go into table editor, click on items, and you should see that it's initialized this with a bunch of items. All right, so what you want to do now is just go back to your localhost, refresh this, you will see that it's pulling the information from the database now. So if you buy a wooden sword and it becomes 0, you can see if you go back here and refresh this page, you will see the wooden sword go down to 0. So now you have the project up and running. You should be able to play around with it and follow along the earlier part of the tutorial. But I'm going to continue to show you how you can get the Supabase MCP server running on a Mac. So as before, we'll be using the Supabase MCP server by Alexander Zuev. So you go to python.org, download 3.13.2, or you can get 3.12, which I had before. Once that's been installed, you should be able to go into your IDE and run something like Python. All right, and you can see I have 3.12.3 installed right now. So now you can follow the exact same steps that I had before to install pipx and then to install the MCP server. So what you want to do is to do python -m pip install user pipx and do that. In my case, I already have it installed. And then remember, you have to do python -m pipx ensure path to make sure that it's been added to the path. So it says all pipx binary has been appended to the path. I'm going to do pipx, and it's great, it's running. And you can do pipx version just to guarantee it. So it's definitely running here. And what you're supposed to do now is just do pipx install Supabase MCP server. And mine's already installed. And so you can actually verify this by doing Supabase MCP server, and you'll see that it's running. Great. So how do you actually add this into Cursor this time? It's very similar to Windsurf. You do Command-Shift-P, and then you do Cursor settings, go to MCP. You will see that it's already added. And the reason why is that if you look into the folder structure that you just cloned, I actually have an mcp.json with everything here pre-populated. Now, the things that you need to do is to replace these items with your project, and you also need to change the command here to point to where your Supabase MCP server is. So the way you do it is you do where Supabase MCP server. You will get this path, copy and paste this. It's going to be different for you, and pop it into here. All right. And for everything else, it's just like earlier in the tutorial. You can get all of this from Supabase. I'm going to do this very quickly. For project, you go back into Supabase, scroll down. Remember, it's just these letters before the supabase.co. And you pop it in here. The password is the one that you set earlier. You should use something far more appropriate and secure. Supabase region, like I said, I was in Frankfurt, so this is the key for it. And you can find a list that corresponds to your server location in the README file of this repository. The access token is the one here, And finally, the service role key is hidden somewhere else. Go to project settings, go to data API, and you see service role secret. Reveal it, copy it. You must never ever share this with anyone. Goes without saying, and pop it into here. That should be all fine. So once this is done, all right, you need to go back to Cursor settings. Make sure you refresh and make sure that this is enabled. And make sure to refresh this as well, because you will need to pick up the configuration changes that you made. Just enable and disable it just in case. Command I and do something like update all items in my database to be 999. And let's go. It's going to call the get schemas method. It's going to run in unsafe mode, and it's managed to connect. So it's going to get the tables, it's going to understand the schema, and it's going to run the query to update it all to, there we go. And it says it successfully updated it. So let's verify it. Let's check Supabase first. We go to the table editor, go to items. All the items are now 999, and then we can switch back to our shop, refresh the page, and you can see it's all 999, and it still works, right? If I buy stuff, so I buy 5 wooden swords, go back to the database, you can see it's all working fine. So that's it, folks. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I've showed you how to get this working on Windows and on Mac, on Windsurf and on Cursor. I've showed you how to use the out-of-the-box Postgres MCP server from Windsurf and showed you why it's not good enough. And then I've showed you how to use Alexander Zhuev's Supabase MCP server, which is far more powerful, and it's going to be able to supercharge your byte coding because you don't have to mess around with SQL commands anymore. If you enjoyed this video, I would really appreciate a like. Keep your comments coming in, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I do a lot more content, not just on MCP servers, but also on how to use byte coding for game development. I really appreciate your time, and have a nice day.